Okay, welcome everyone. My lecture today is going to consist of a demonstration. I'm going to talk a little bit about database analysis and summary queries, but I'm going to spend majority of time just kind of giving a demonstration of some of the tools that we have available in Access, okay? And so to calculate, analyze, and summarize data, we use a query in Access and all the flexibility of functions and formulas that we have in Microsoft Access. We actually have them, or excuse me, in Microsoft Excel. We also have in Microsoft Access, but we need to use a different tool. And so instead of summarizing directly in our table, we write a query. And with the query, we can create calculated query fields, which I'll go over first. We'll also take a look at the expression builder, a tool for kind of automating that process. And then lastly, what we'll do is we'll summarize with some aggregate functions, and we'll look at how we can group data to kind of come up with some summaries. Okay, so I'll start with what I think is a familiar example we've been using. So I grabbed, I have a report that I run. It actually comes out of Banner, which goes into CyberBear, and then it gets another report gets written out of it from there. So what I have here in this Excel spreadsheet is I have a list of all the courses that are on the spring 2011 schedule, along with the number of students that are enrolled. So for instance, we have this course CAD X142 Geospatial Technologies. Here's the CRN. Here's the instructor, and here's the head count or the enrollment of that particular class. What I'm going to start is I'm going to grab this data and recognize the sequence that I just mentioned where it came from. And there's no reason it can't go from Excel now into Access, or actually out of one of those other formats directly in Access too. All right, but I have it here. It's been cleaned up a little bit, so let's work with this data. I'll save it here, and I'm going to open up a new Microsoft Access database. If we haven't done this before, let me take you through the whole process. Please recognize the difference with Access too, that it works directly with storage instead of storage and memory. So before I do anything, I can't work until I create a file. All right, so I'll do that, and I'm going to throw it right up on my desktop. All right, and we'll call this one example 2 here. Okay, so I got example 2, and I'm going to create that, and now I can write directly to storage. My default, anytime I create a new database, it creates this table 1. I'm going to delete that, and I got to close it off first. All right, and then I can delete it. All right, so let's go get some external data. I'll have to close off my spreadsheet here first. So I'll say create, go get external data, an Excel spreadsheet. I'll go find that. It's on my desktop. It's my academic data example. And we'll get a choice here. I want to import the source data into a new table. And so it's able to go through and find the records and the fields here. And I have we'll just go through this whole interface here. Maybe you've been through, I'll go through a second time. My first row does contain column headings here, so I'll leave that checked. Next thing in my wizard is a field by field analysis here, and I have the field name. I can change that along with the data type. All right, and then whether or not I want to import it. Okay, so I'm going to take this is text data. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to import this one, and by default it looks at the very first value here, and it shows that as being a double precise real number. What I want to do with that is I'll analyze my data, and as I come down the list here, check this out. I have a course here that's 205T, so it can't, if I choose my data type as being a number, it's not going to work. I'm going to change that to text. Go to the next field here. This one is section, and we discovered a little something here with some of these sections. These courses right here, 01C. See how they have a letter on it too? So be careful with your data type. That will not import in as a number. So we'll change that to text. I think credits were okay. Course title were okay. And we did discover an issue in my CRNs too. My course request numbers, where I'm going to make those a text value. instructors text, head count. Right now, well, our head count is, we're going to rename that field. Well, actually, we'll leave it alone. But that's coming in as, that should be an integer. There's no real numbers there. Either you're in the class or you're not. And then we'll get to some of these other statistics over here. And I'm going to delete some of these or not include them. So I'll say I don't want to include RMN, SCH, or FTE. Okay? So hit next. And then I'm going to choose my own primary key. I don't need an auto number like Access does. And in the course scheduling system, as most of you know, every course is uniquely identified by a CRN, a course request number. So that will be our primary key, uniquely identify each record. And then we can name the table. I'll leave it as academic data. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so Access did its job. If I hit all those little parameters right, all my data will come in cleanly. Okay. Now I've been through this example, as you might imagine, a couple times, and if I point out the mistakes here, anything that doesn't come in cleanly, I'll get a little error on. It'll still import the table, but it won't put the data in for those records where the error occurs. And my error here, I'll go back to an example. Here I have a course number that has an E after it, and here I have a section number that actually has a C. So they're not really numbers at that point, are they? All right. So so I have my data in. I got my head count here, and let me just get something to write on here. Let me pull up a little notepad document, and I will make the font a little bigger here so everybody has a good view on it. And so I'm going to come up with a couple new calculated fields. In some of the vocabulary in the university world, we have student head count, or SCH, I think they call it, student head count. Or actually it's student credit hours, excuse me. I don't know the system as well as I should. But when we take the number of credits and then we multiply it by the head count, okay, that's how we figure student credit hours. Okay, so that's one calculation that we'll do in here. And another calculation we do is we call FTE, which is full-time equivalent. And so I figure a student takes 15 credits to be considered full-time. So we take our student credit hour and we divide that by 15. Okay, so these are two calculated fields that we're going to create using a query. All right, so I'll put that in the background there, and let's create our query here. I'll close off my academic data. Yeah, I want to save it. And then I'm going to go back over to my Create tab. I'm going to create a new query. And here's my academic data. Close that off. And let's throw some fields in. There's a number of ways I can do it. I can go down here and use the field tool down here. Or else I'm just going to drag and drop. Okay, so I'm going to go department, boom, course, section number. What else do I want here? I need number of credits. If I'm going to use that as a calculation, put those over there. And let me put the instructor name over here. All right, maybe we should put, we got section in there already. And do we need a CRN? I think we'll leave the CRN out. If I want to delete, do you see I have a space here? If I want to delete one of these, any of these, I highlight them. Okay, that's not highlighting. I have to get the whole thing to turn black. And then I'm just going to hit the delete key on my keyboard. All right, or else I could use cut. I will delete off my keyboard, and that deletes that field. Okay, so I'm in my design view. I'll go from my design view and then back into my datasheet view, and I've gone through and I've created a new query here. All right, let me go back into my design view, and let's put this in a nice order that we saw it in our earlier report. So I want to first sort by department, then course, and then section number. Okay, we'll use those three sort fields. And now I have things in order here. Here's my CAD courses, my CRT courses, my computer science courses, etc. And then I have two courses with the same department course number. Then I sort it by section number. Okay, nice clean looking report. All right, and I save this structure, and I'll leave it as query 1. Let me go back into my design view here again, and I want to create a calculated field now. Okay, so I want to take my formula here that I've created where I want to figure out student credit hours, which are the number of credits multiplied by the head count. Actually, I don't have my head count in there, do I? Let's put that in. Grab and drop that. Okay, so here's where I'll put a calculated field, and really we're just going to multiply these two fields together. The syntax is a little different. Rather than say equals, we give it a column or a field name. Okay, calculate a field name here I'm going to call as just SCH. And then rather than equal sign, we use a full colon. And then we take the name of each field, and my names just match up here real nicely. So it's credit times head count. Okay, in a spreadsheet we use what? Cell references. So I'll take all that, I'll copy that, and I'm just going to drop it. Actually, I'll show you a couple tools here. All right, one of the things I have here is I have a zoom tool, because this is a tiny little box here, and my formulas tend to exceed the boundaries there. So I'll use my zoom tool. I'm going to just paste that in there. Okay, so I have SCH, which is going to be my field heading, and then a colon, and then credits times head count. Click OK, and it drops that in there. Now let me go back in. I'll zoom it one more time here, and I'll grab a little bigger font here so you can get a little better sight on this. All right, you notice how Access puts this in these little brackets here. The only reason for that is a lot of times if we have field names and we have spaces, like I have head space count, that indicates that it's the one complete name. Okay, so really head space count is two names. And if we do have that, the brackets insulate us from having issues with that. Okay, so let's see if that worked. All right, so I'll run the query, or I just go to datasheet view, your choice. Well, let's do a run. Okay, and let's look at the results here. Okay, so I've taken now, I got my 3 credit course. This is an easy one to calculate. I multiply it by my head count. 3 times 20 is 60. Okay, so that appears to have worked effectively there. All right, let's go back to my datasheet view, and let's create another calculated query here, or excuse me, a calculated field. And let me use, there's other tools here too, and there's always, like any software package, there's multiple ways of doing things. I'm down here and I'm right-clicking because that's convenient for me to use my mouse. But I can also go up here, and I have these other tools here. So this brings up my query parameters. If I take a look at this. All right, here's my, if I want to do totals, here's my table names I can look at. Property sheets, we'll look at that in just a minute here. So I have these tools here. I also have, as I start to work through this, if I'm going to create a new query, I have this, you see this little magical wand here, query builder. I also get the same thing if I right click and I hit the build. Okay, so either way you want to do it, so I'll hit my build here, and now this is another tool that I can use that really does the same thing. All right, but it has all the expressions here. So this is known as an expression builder. Great tool. You may want to use it. Maybe it's quicker for you to do it by hand. I'm going to use it just for this example. This would actually be quicker for me to write out by hand. And really my equation or formula that goes in here is going to be just like this, but I use a colon here with that Microsoft Access syntax. Okay, so let's build this using a calculated field. And so what I want to do, I want to find SCHs and divide it by 15. Okay, so I go over here to where my SCH is found. They're actually in my query. SCHs, where we got those here? It's actually not going to show me that because it's a calculated field. I'm going to have to write that by hand. No worries. Let's come back here. We'll grab this. I'll put it in here. Okay. Click OK. Whoops. Try that again here. Got a space in there. Messed us up. Okay. Let's run it now. All right. So let's go back to our simple example. I had a head count of 20 here. Okay, so 3 times 20 is 60, and then 60 divided by 15 is 4. So it looks like my calculations are working appropriately. Note I got some other issues going here, though. I see this pounds. Anytime you see a pound like that, it means that the number is exceeding the space requirements there. Okay, and we can resolve that in our properties over here, where we can format. And what do we want to show this as? We want a fixed number here, and I think we need to have one other. Actually, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this right now, but we can change. If we're going to change it, it'd be over here in the property sheet. Okay. And so my property sheet I can close off, and I'll show you again where you can come up with your property sheets across the top here. And I can change the format of my numbers this way. Okay, and I'm going to have to come up with a custom format to truncate that, I believe. Let me see what I got here. Dates, I got dates, times, general numbers, but I think I need one more parameter here, and it's going to be something custom. So again, I'm gonna punt on this. Excuse me for leaving you hanging there, but we'll come back to that maybe another time. All right. So I've accomplished my query here, which is great. Good start and everything. And I'll show you. Let me do one other little example here. Let me get rid of. Actually, let's start a new query. Let me close this. And recognize too that this is queries draw information from tables. So I didn't create any. With the exception of my calculations here, these queries are run on a table with some calculated values in them. Let's do one other little exercise here, and I'm going to create again a new query. And so we worked with some calculated fields. We introduced the expression builder, and let me do some summary with some aggregate functions and some data grouping here. Okay. So I'll put this up here, but before I dive into this query too much, let me draw an analogy from Microsoft Excel here. And if I go back and I open up that same file that we were working with before, one of the tools that I have for analysis that we looked at was to do some subtotaling, okay, where we could actually take some of our data and work on some subtotal information. And in order to do that, we needed to first sort by the field that we want to subtotal. Okay, so I'm envisioning a little. I don't know. Maybe we're all sitting around as faculty and we're saying, okay, who's grading the most papers? And maybe we base that on student head count. And so I'm going to go into in my example here now, and I'm going to sort by instructor. All right, so again, to do that, we go our data and we say sort, and we'll go A to Z. Okay, so I have each of my instructors, and now I'm gonna do some grouping here where I do subtotals now. Okay, so I'll use my subtotal tool, and I want to at each change of instructor, I want to do some subtotaling, and what do I work with here? I want to work with head count. All right, and we're going to do what? We're going to sum those. Okay, so I do that, and I'll collapse this, and I come up with some totals here. Okay, and so I can look at who's got the most students, and then from that, who's got the most papers that they need to grade. Might be a way of looking at it. All right, so that's a similar exercise using Excel here. Let me get rid of that, and let's come back into Microsoft Access. And so we're going to look here at instructors, and we're going to look at head count. All right, and if I run that query just the way it is, this shows me every instructor in every one of their classes and the head count. All right, well that's not what I want. I want no totals here. All right, and you can see, I'll look at me here. I got 11 students in this class, and I got 22, and then I'm kind of spread all over the map here. So what we need to do is do some grouping or some totaling, okay? And there's a number of ways to do this. One, this will show or hide the columns total in the query results. So watch below here when I toggle this on. We start grouping data. So here I'm grouping data by instructor, and here what I can do is I could choose to summarize that data. Okay, let me run that now. And so here I've summarized the head count for each of my instructors. All right, let me go back and let's do one more. Let me go into view here, and we're in our paper grading mode, so let's sort this in descending order. Okay, and I'll view it again. Did I get that right? I have wrong there. Whoops, I got instructor name. That's not what we want to sort. Descending order. So as we're looking at our paper counting exercise here, we could give a fictitious award to Professor Rhonda Tabish here for having the most papers to grade this semester. Okay? Let's look at this one more way that I could do this. All right, so we have our grouping and our subtotals here. Let me go into my my zoom tool here. In fact, let me take the head count here, and actually I'm going to use, let me show you one other tool here before you get into this. One of the things that you see with queries is that we have our datasheet view and our design view. We'll look a little bit at pivots out of chapter 5 if we have time in this course, but I want to look at SQL view. And SQL stands for Structured Query Language. And this is another way of writing queries. I'm going to cut all this out. I'll put this in my notepad so you can read it a little better. Make this a little bigger now. All right, and so SQL is this really great universal tool that allows us to write queries and actually push and pull information out of databases. All right, and what Access does, if you look at this, the name of my table is academic data, so it matches up each field where it describes both the table and then the field. And so here's my instructor field. It's really academic space data dot instructor, and here's my head count, academic space data dot head count. Okay, because I have a single table database here, I'm not doing any joins. I'm going to simplify this a little bit. So I'm going to group by, so I'm going to find here the, now see if you make sense out of this. The sum of the head count from academic data, group by instructor, and then we're going to sort this by the head count, or order by the head count in descending order. Okay? So this is another way I can write a query, and if you, as you leave this course, and if this is of interest to you, there's great opportunities for database people who could write a little SQL code. Nice thing about SQL is it's a universal language. So whether you're working with Oracle databases, Microsoft SQL Server, the open source product MySQL, or even little old Microsoft Access here, this language, once you know it, is consistently standardized across all those databases. And there's little exceptions to that. But let me take this now, and let's write this whole query in SQL. And I'll do a little, whoops, let me get back to my sheet here. I'll do a copy. And I'm going to go back over to my query here, and I will write this as a SQL query, and I'll run it. Whoops, I got an issue here. Where's my head count? Okay, so I have this little issue here, and I'm going to go back and review my SQL code. And I have here, my issue exists is that I'm taking the sum of the head count, but it's not one of my fields. So let me get rid of my sort here for the time being, because this should work. Okay, so I have, so what you see in that little box there, I'll just magnify it for you here. It looks like this. We're going to select the instructor, and then the sum of the head count from the academic data table, and then we're going to group that by instructor. Okay, so let's run that. and that gives me my total head count for each of my instructors. You notice how it comes out as expression 1001. Well, we need to put a little more description there, so we can we'll take this and we'll say display this as, we gotta give it a name. We'll call it, and we'll use our camel case here. Remember camel case, total head count. Okay. I think I have my syntax there correctly, and if I don't, we'll revise it. Okay, there we go. And then if I want to sort that, I got one more little SQL code to put in, and so I want to group by, and then order by is the sort. I'll write that here for you. Order by total head count. Okay, and that would order it by this calculation here. Okay, so grab all that, copy, paste it in my query, my SQL query, and I run it now. Whoops, I still got one more little issue here, total head count. I have some troubles with this one. Let's try another way, putting this together, sum of the head count. Let's try and run that. And there we go. Okay, but we have that now in ascending order. See how you just keep playing with this? We want to put in descending order. So, what's the last part here? DES. Okay, DESC, I believe, is descending order. I run that, and now it puts in the right order. Okay, so another way of viewing the query, and then I go back over here to my query builder, my design view, and I basically have the same, you see I have the same tally over here. Same tools. So that's the third, and I want to give you that more for you know, general information. I won't hold you responsible for it. Hey, if you're really interested in this stuff, we offer a whole database design course that'll be delivered here in the fall. The name of the course is Computer Science 240 or CI 240 Databases in SQL, and that's the next iteration if you are interested in database.